Hey, if you're a Rush fan, I think you're going to enjoy this video I have for you today. What we do here on this channel a lot is we find old newspaper articles, concert reviews, record reviews, things that go back into the 70s, 80s, 90s. And the one that I found for you today, I thought was pretty interesting. This is a concert review for Rush, and it was published on December 22nd, and it's in the Ottawa Journal. And this is, again, on the tour for Hemispheres. And the headline for this article, this concert review, is Deaf, Dumb, and Blind. And it's kind of fascinating how this person responds to going to this Rush concert. And I find these things so fascinating, hearing what people were saying at the time. And some of these people were familiar with these bands, and some of these people just weren't. They were set out on assignment to just report on what they saw at this concert. And some of those are so fascinating because they're so clueless. But anyway, this one's kind of interesting. And what I'm hoping will happen here is that so many of you, myself included, we saw Rush back in the day. I saw them, I don't know, 3 or 4 times, but I didn't see them during the 70s. And I know a lot of the people that watch this channel were going to concerts at that time and would have seen these. And I'd really love to get your feedback on if you saw Rush during this period, especially this specific one, which was during Hemispheres. What was your experience like at that concert? And did anything that this concert reviewer say resonate with your experience with Rush at this time? All right, so I'm going to read this to you now. And again, the headline, Deaf, Dumb, and Blind. And this is from the Ottawa Journal, December 22nd, 1978, page 21. Deaf, Dumb, and Blind. That's how Rush Tour de Force leaves you. Okay. The mind can only take so much blowing. The problem at the Civic Center Thursday night was that once hard rock group Rush had blown our minds, they started hammering our heads with so much raw power that we just couldn't take anymore. The Toronto group's 2-hour concert started excellently and moved from strength to strength with some fine, taut, and at times mystical music. But then they let the concert get away with them, and the final 30 minutes in the Civic Center became as close to hell as we will ever get. Okay, again, if you saw them during this tour, I wanted to see if you can relate to whatever we're talking about here. Okay, so abbreviation not only of the concert as a whole, but of most of the individual pieces would have helped. As it was, we were deafened, dumbfounded, and blinded by the end. Certainly, the concert was one of the loudest in Ottawa for many moons, but the visual effects were equally strong. An explosion here, puffs of smoke there, a Star Wars-style film on the back screen. And that was, I of course was, when this happened, I was 9, I guess. So I wasn't going to concerts then, and I don't know what was happening, but I would imagine that those things like a film on a back screen was in its infancy. You didn't find things like that back then. At least I don't think. I mean, the biggest it got was, Kiss always had their big logo in the back of the stage, and I don't know that many people were doing what they describe here, Star Wars-style film on the back screen. Again, if you saw this stuff, I would love to hear about it. And other people that read our comments would probably love to hear about this stuff too. Okay. Everything was right, but it was simply overdone. Restraint and some remodeling is necessary if the rest of the Rush tour, which next year takes the group to the United States and Europe, is to be an artistic as well as a financial success. But while some criticism is necessary, it is important to point out that Rush are one of the finest groups around with a stylish stage show second to few. It is frankly mind-boggling that 3 musicians can produce so much. And of course, anybody that's followed Rush and their critical acclaim over the years and what people have had to say about them, that is one thing. Even if they hate their music, they go, you've got these 3 guys that are creating this massive sound, and you think, how in the world are these 3 guys doing this? Because it sounds so much bigger, what they create. Okay, Alex Lifeson, a shaggy dog of a lead guitarist, Geddy Lee, a witch-like lead vocalist and bass player, and drummer Neil Peart, who has now taken almost complete control of the band's lyric writing, cumulatively produce so much pounding, heavy rock that you feel the only possible finality at their disposal is to self-destruct. Happily, they didn't. Though Just about everyone in the audience jumped 10 feet when the first of their explosion flashes suddenly went off. The group mixes its material, taking pieces from their Fly By Night, 2112, A Farewell to Kings albums, as well as their most recent Hemispheres, arguably the most disappointing part of the concert. That's pretty interesting to hear that. I mean, La Via Strangiato is one of their like immortal pieces, and that was off of that album. So that would have been awesome to see that. And then one of my favorite Rush songs of all time is The Trees. And that became a staple in their concerts, at least for a while, didn't it? And so anyway, just interesting to hear that. Let's see here. The band rarely lets up on the pace, always pounding, pounding, and pounding some more until your eardrums cry for mercy. The group has gone heavily into science fiction, sorcery, and mysticism since Peart took over, and many of their pieces relate epic stories. But unlike the British storytellers, such as Genesis and the Moody Blues, they almost never introduce softer tones into their music. Sad, it could help. And I wonder, is that a fair statement? And maybe it is, and I'm just not hearing something correctly, because when they introduce soft tones in their music all over the place. I mean, the two I just mentioned, La Via Strangiato, I mean, it has, one of the beauties of that piece of music is that it does flow. It goes into the, it's loud, and then it kind of tones back, and it comes back. And The Trees, the other one I mentioned, same thing. I mean, it starts off with that nice acoustic stuff, and then gung 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 gung. There's and then of course it goes heavy, and then when it gets into the musical part, it settles down again. So anyway, it's just interesting that this person puts it that way. They never introduce softer tones because they do really. One of Rush's strengths was their dynamics, up and down. They really did have that. And so anyway, and maybe I'm missing something. I'd love to get your feedback on this because I know we have a lot of Rush fans that watch these videos. And again, this was a different time before I was going to concerts. I am familiar with all the music from that period, but maybe in the concert there was something different that you experienced when you're there that I wouldn't know about. So anyway, I'd love to get your feedback. Geddy Lee is the perfect front man, exuding a wicked warmth, but the real stars of the show are the amazing array of instruments the band utilizes. Everything from the most elaborate percussion set around twin neck guitars, programmed synthesizers, and the computer-like light show, which is an instrument of its own, always in time, always in tune with the situation. A nice touch toward the end, when the band bashed out The First Noel for Christmas, a slick, stylish, if over loud and over long show. That's pretty interesting. And here again, this concert, or the review's written on December 22nd, so that means the concert, I don't know if it mentioned it early in the article, don't remember if it did, but it means the concert would have happened within a few days of this prior, which is right before Christmas. And apparently in this concert, they played The First Noel. If any of you ever experienced Rush doing that, that would be interesting to hear about. Again, down in the notes, love to hear about this stuff. Okay, and then this is kind of interesting because always at the end of these concert reviews, or frequently, they'll go back and they'll mention something about the opening act. And so transplanted Australian band Wireless, who opened the concert, looked almost good until Rush came along to prove how much the second stringers have yet to learn about staging, pacing, and hard rock music. All their pieces sounded very much the same. Some good vocals were spoiled by overly heavy backing, but the group at least showed they know something about rock, but there's still a long, long way to go. So they're referring, of course, to the band Wireless here. But it is interesting to listen to that, how they're talking about how Rush has really kind of learned how to be great on stage. And I wonder how much of that can be credited to their experience touring with Kiss as much as they did. Because they were exposed early on when Kiss took them out on the road to a group of people. You don't have to like Kiss's music, but I mean, you can even hear Geddy Lee talking about this, where he says, look, there's nobody that worked harder than they did. And they put on a great show for the fans. And during this period, which would have been not long after those experiences opening up for Kiss, at this point, I think they were obviously a headlining group. how much of that influence had they picked up on that said, we have to make sure that when we're out in front of an audience that we're giving them the kind of thing. And you can't compare Rush and Kiss. I mean, that's ridiculous. But one of the things that I think Gene Simmons said a long time ago is that the DNA of Kiss shows are all over in everything today. They had kind of mastered the art of putting on a great visual presentation, and so many other bands were influenced by that over time and did the same kind of thing, that just realized, look, there has to be an element of stage presence. We have to be able to get up there and give something visually appealing as well. And that's why it's interesting when I'm reading this. And again, I'd love your feedback, because I didn't see this stuff. When they talk about the explosions, they talk about the smoke, they talk about the big screen in the back with the movie playing. What was that like to be there? And you wonder how much of that was a direct influence from their relationship, and so many bands' relationship with groups like Kiss that had set that standard, where it's like, we want to give people their money's worth when they show up, so that they're getting not just great music, but they're getting a great show to go along with it. Anyway, I didn't mean to get off on that part of it, but I thought that was interesting. Hopefully you enjoy these things as well. And I'd love to get, again, if you saw this during this time, love to get your feedback and talking about what that show was like. And of course, please follow the channel, like the video, share this. If you're a Rush fan, you definitely know other Rush fans, and they'd probably get a kick out of this too. So please share it with them and leave comments, as we said before. And with that, as always, have yourself a fantastic day.